Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on another episode of Ask Sharifah Videocast. It is Monday, amazing day, and I have an incredible guest for you today. And I'm going to tell you right now, you want to go ahead and get your pad, get your pencil, take notes on your computer, iPhone, cell phone, because our guest today is a wealth of information, and I can't wait to introduce you to him. So as always, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and share this interview because friends don't let friends miss out on Ask Sharifah. So if you have questions, if you have comments, please feel free to ask those in the comment section, and I'll go ahead and read those to today's guest. And our guest today is Mr. Raymond Zinn. And Mr. Raymond Zinn is an inventor. He's an entrepreneur. He's an angel investor. But what really got me is he is one of the longest serving CEOs of a publicly traded company in Silicon Valley. Interesting, I know. Good afternoon, Mr. Zinn. How are you?
Doing fine, Sharifah. Thank you.
You are so welcome. Thank you for joining me today. So you are an entrepreneur, inventor. How did you get your start in this area?
Well, I think I started really young. My dad was in the cattle business, and I was trying to find a way to open a gate faster. And it was really funny. I designed this system that's almost like a lift, pulling down a weight, and then that weight would open this gate up and then allow the animal to go through. The only problem was that I was pretty strong as a young person, and I could open the gate, but nobody else could. So my invention was a little ill-founded. I was 16 at the time. And it was a little ill-founded because I didn't test other people to see how they could lift it. So when we added more weight to allow other people to lift it, then we had to close the gate manually, meaning you had to lift back up again. So it was that's how I got started. And I've been inventing ever since. So I love to think of ideas to solve problems.
Yes. So you said that first idea, maybe it didn't work out the way that you expected to, but that opened up a love for trying new things, trying to figure out things and become an inventor. So you started early on, but you went on to be one of the longest serving CEOs in Silicon Valley. So how long were you a CEO in Silicon Valley?
37 years.
Wow. 37 years. That's incredible.
Yep. Probably never be beaten. The record will probably stand forever.
I don't know. I'm trying to compete. I'm gonna move out to Silicon Valley and be there for 50 years just so I can.
There you go. That's it. Well, 38, you beat me.
At 39, I'm just gonna move back to Long Beach where I am. But as an angel investor, as an inventor, you took your information and you published a book. Mr. Zinn, tell us about your book and what inspired you to write that.
Well, when I started the company back in 78, I had a number of people tell me, how can you start a company with no venture money, being a technical company or a technology company like Micrel was? It's difficult to do that unless you have a lot of money or unless you can get a venture capitalist to fund you. So I didn't want that. I didn't have enough money to do it on my own. So I went with a bank loan, and that was difficult because the banks don't like the loan to startups. So I had to agree I said, okay, just tell me what covenants I'd have to abide by, and I'll agree to it. So the covenant that they required me to have, well, a number of them, but the most important one was that I had to be profitable from day one. In other words, that I had to develop a business that would be profitable on an annual basis. Mm-hmm. And so that made me change my business plan because first I was going to develop a product, but of course, when you develop it, then it costs money, and then you try to get customers and so forth. So I said, well, then I'll change the plan, and I went to a service business where I was almost providing a service as opposed to a product. That's so I could get the money to get started. So it took about 5 years, I think, maybe 6, before we could develop our own products, because I had to have enough cash flow to actually fund the product development. But my goal was to start a company And I really didn't have a product in mind per se. It was that I wanted to form a company, because companies live forever, but products don't.
Right.
Products live about 5 years, and then you have to have a new one. So if you're not thinking ahead 5 years out, you're unlikely going to come up with a long longevity product or company, because your company is not going to survive.
But let me just ask you this question. You know, again, you were the longest serving CEO in Silicon Valley, 37 years. Do you feel that the same rules, processes apply now in 2019 as they did 37 years ago, as far as obtaining a loan or venture capitalists?
Yes, I think they do apply. The principles are the same.
Mm-hmm.
And, you have to have a passion. You got to be risk averse. You got to have a drive to succeed. And you just have to have that will to win. Mm-hmm. And so, those principles still apply. Can you get a loan from a bank? Sure. You have to agree to some things that maybe you don't want to, like I had to do. I had to be profitable from the get-go. And so that was a challenge. Because I had to change my business plan from developing products to actually providing a service so that I could be profitable. So you have to be patient. It took me 5 years after starting the company before I could actually do what I wanted to do, which is start designing products.
So when you mentioned the difference between a product and a service, usually, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I want to make sure everyone who's watching and everyone who's listening understands, but usually with a product, it takes lead time. It takes time to build awareness. It takes time for the, research, and it takes time, where a service, you can offer that service immediately.
Exactly, and get paid for it.
Yes, but a product takes time. Exactly.
So it took me, a little longer, but I formed a company. In other words, I got a company going, and people, hiring employees, and so we actually, got ourselves established as a company, and then we were able to fund the product. Now, maybe that's not for you. Maybe that's not a way you want to go. Well, but that's the way I went.
No, there are people who will argue that in starting a business, they would rather just go out, offer a service, offer a product, as opposed to even going to a bank and trying to get a loan or reaching out to angel investors, because like you mentioned, usually there are requirements, or maybe that angel investor wants large ownership of the company that they're not willing to give up. And they say, okay, you know what, instead of getting outside resources, I'm just going to focus on providing the service or focus on marketing the product. What are your thoughts or recommendations?
Well, it doesn't matter. I mean, you can, venture capital has its advantages and has its disadvantages. You can get going quicker with venture capital, but by the same token, they're going to own a big chunk of your company.
Yes.
And I wanted to dictate my own destiny, and I didn't want, a bunch of VCs telling me how to run the business.
Right.
And so that's what I wanted. So as an entrepreneur, you have to decide, what's more important. I know people that all they want is the recognition. They just want to be a CEO. Yes. And they don't care. If they only owning 10% or 5%, they don't care. They just want to be a CEO. And so that's their stick. If that's their goal, just to be a CEO, then they can go with venture capital, because they'll let you be the CEO. You just won't own much of the company.
Correct.
And you really won't control your own destiny. Most CEOs in Silicon Valley last about 3 to 5 years. And so that's why I became the longest serving CEO, because I get to find my own destiny. And that's how I lasted 37, which is, like more than 10 times longer than most CEOs last. Absolutely.
But that's also more than 10 times longer than a lot of companies last.
That's true too. Yeah. 90% of all companies fail within the first 3 years.
Yes, absolutely.
So and the reason, why, Sharif?
Why?
Because they run out of money. In other words, if you're going to start a business, business number one, make sure you raise enough money to go profitable. If not, don't start your company. So raise enough money to take yourself to profitability. Okay,
Right.
because once you're profitable, then you can sustain yourself.
Right.
But don't even attempt to raise money unless it's enough to take you to profitability. Why? Because you'll spend all your time raising money and not running your business.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't run your business is going to run you, and you're going to go out of business. So
Yes.
I call it having positive cash flow. You want to breathe in more than you exhale, because what it's like. If you exhale more than you inhale, you're going to die.
Yes.
And so if you can't inhale more than you can exhale, or your gazentus is great into gazatus, you're not going to last.
Right. I've also found that many small business owners, they begin their business without absolutely any collateral or any resources, any cash flow at all. And they expect to operate out of their sales, out of the profits. Oh, I'm going to make a lot of money, so I'll be able to stay in business, as opposed to having enough money in the bank for a certain amount of time, whether or not they make a sale or make a profit. And so I always look at it like a lot of the business owners is more like a Hail Mary pass. I'm a football fan, so if you can relate to a Hail Mary pass, it's just they have to have that, because they may have enough money to stay in business or to operate for 1 month, where, the Harvard School rule of thumb is 5 years. If you go to the SBA, it will tell you you should have enough in the bank to operate for at least 3 years, whether or not you make one sale. But too many people go into business with just enough money for a limited amount of time. What are your thoughts on that, Mr. Zinn?
Well, it's exactly like you said. You have to have working capital. Working capital means that you have the ability to operate your business while you collect your receivables. So receivables on average are 45 days. And so if you can only last until, it's like having only living by what we call living paycheck to paycheck. You've heard that term before. And people who live paycheck to paycheck, if they have anything happen at all, any kind of a illness or any kind of problem comes up, they're in trouble, because they're only having enough money just to survive.
Yes.
Okay. And so, you don't want to do that. You want to have, you can want to put away a little bit. You want to have a little longevity. We call it runway. You want to have enough runway to take off.
Right.
And so, if you don't have that working capital to operate your business by allowing yourself to wait 45 days or whatever your average receivables are, and then have enough to develop your products, because R&D costs money, you have to have enough cash flow to allow you to operate your business profitably and still develop products. So you want to have enough money in the bank to last at least 90 days or 3 months. If you don't have enough money to hold you for 90 days, you're not going to last long.
Right, absolutely. And then also what happens is maybe you have that amazing, wonderful marketing idea that you would love to, push your product or your service. But again, you're operating with very limited resources. So to you, again, back to the Hail Mary pass, it's like, we have this marketing campaign has to work. It has to work, because now I've sunk every last bit of money the company has into this marketing idea, as opposed to creating several marketing campaigns, testing it out, doing, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't. But it's like, this has to work. And that's where I've seen so many companies, okay, now they're out of business because they were just expecting this to automatically generate a certain amount of profit for them.
Well, and that's the problem with most businesses. They don't have a plan to survive. They have a plan to start, but not a plan to survive.
Yes.
So, you have to look at both, your product idea, and then how long can you survive?
Yes.
And so I say, as my rule of thumb is that you have to have enough money to take you to profitability.
Yes.
Because once you're profitable, then you have enough cash flow to continue operations. So don't even think about starting your company or your business unless you have at least enough cash to take you to profitability. Cash is king. Okay.
Yes.
And if you don't believe that, you're going to be out of business shortly.
Yes, and you won't be able to make those 37 years.
No, you won't be able to go 37 years.
Now, Mr. Zinn, we are coming down to the last few minutes of the show. And two things I like to do at the end of every show is just allow my guests the opportunity to speak directly to the audience and let them know what you want them to take away from your interview, as well as let them know where they can contact you and pick up a copy of your book.
Okay, so what I'd like to leave with them is that discipline is doing what you don't like doing and doing it well. I call it doing the tough things first. In other words, that's my book. My book was written to really encourage people to develop the habit of doing the things they don't like doing and doing it well. I call it loving the things you hate. And I'm sure, Sharifah, you have things you don't like doing. But
Like
what I've learned to do is I've learned to love those things because, as Emerson said, that which you persist in doing becomes easier. Not that the nature of the task changes, but your ability to perform it becomes easier. So you just have to keep working at it and working at it. You know, it's, as they call it, it's a work in progress. So, you know, do the tough things first. And you can find me on my website, toughthingsfirst.com. We have our podcasts. We have our blogs that we post daily. We have tweets and we do all kinds of tips we give entrepreneurs. And so that's the takeaway message I have is go to my website, learn how to do the tough things first, Sharifah.
Yes, and it's toughthingsfirst.com, correct?
Correct. It is toughthingsfirst.com. I have 2 books out. You can get Tough Things First on Amazon, or you can get Zinn of Zinn also on Amazon. Zinn of Zinn are hints and ideas and musings that you can use to improve your life on a day-to-day basis. You don't have to be an entrepreneur. Anybody who wants to improve their life, they want to do better, you know, they can pick up my book, Zinn of Zinn.
Zinn of Zinn. So is that Z-E-N?
Yes.
Of Zinn, Z-I-N-N.
Correct.
I love that, Zinn. That just calmed me. You just have that calming effect. So I love it, Mr. Zinn. You've given us a lot of information, a wonderful guest. I just want to thank you for being today's guest on Ask Sharifah Videocast.
You're welcome, Sharifah.
And I want to thank everyone who watched. Thank you for the love. Thank you for the hearts. Thank you for the thumbs up. I definitely appreciate your support. Thank you for tuning in. If you would like to be a guest, if you would like to watch more of my interviews, please visit the website at AskSharifah.com. Until then, everyone have a blessed day. Thank you.